Alright, now we're ready for some more open string chords. And again, what I mean by open string chords, it means that you're going to be fingering some strings, and then some strings will be open. There's sometimes, when some chords are bar chords where you're making use of every string. We'll get into that later. And so that's the alternative. You have bar chords or you have open string chords. And so we're going to be doing some open string chords first because they're the easiest, okay? So we've already learned the E minor and the D chord, add 6, add 2 over F sharp. So we have those two chords in our arsenal. So we're going to learn a few more. We're going to learn 3 during this lesson, the most common chords, and they're used just all the time in guitar music. And the first one we're going to learn is a G chord. Now there's several ways to play a G chord. That's the thing about guitars. You can have one chord, but you can play it a zillion different ways. This is the most common way right here, which I'm going to show you, a G chord. You can also play it this way or this way. Lots of different ways to do it. But so let's start. We're just going to use 3 fingers. So what we're going to do first, and you might want to keep a log of all your chords. Just write this out, write out your strings on a sheet of paper and put, what fret number it goes on. But to do the G chord, what we need is our middle finger to be on the 3rd fret here on the low E. So we count frets. 1, 2, 3. So that's where we want our finger, on the low E right here, the thick string, and we want our middle finger on it. Okay? So middle finger, and we should get this. Okay, that's a G note. Okay, and the next thing we want is we want a 2nd fret on the A string. Okay, so that's going to be 2nd fret on the A, 1, 2, right here. So we want our pointer finger to be on that A string. So middle finger, pointer, and again, be on your fingertips, because if you're pulling back at all like that, you're going to mute the D string, and we don't want that. We want the D to be free to ring like that, okay? And the last thing we're going to do is take our ring finger here. And it's important you use your ring finger. You might be tempted to use your pinky, but go ahead and use your ring finger. There's a good reason for doing that. Here at the top on the high E, okay? So use our ring finger there. All right? And so we have 3 strings down. We have 3, 3rd fret on the low E, 2nd fret on the A string, and then open, open, open on the D, G, B. And that actually is a G chord all by itself, those 3 notes. Okay? So those are open, and then we have 3rd fret here. So once you get your fingers set, and on your fingertips now, the tips of your fingers, then you want to check the strings one at a time. And there we have it. Okay, you don't want this. You don't want it to sound like this. Because I'm laying my hand back a little bit there, and the fingers are touching the other string. So make sure you got a full chord there. That's a G chord. Now, the next chord we're going to learn is a C chord, and then we're going to learn a D chord. I know we already learned this D chord, but this is going to be a way more common D chord that we're going to learn. And the reason I'm showing you these 3 chords, the G chord, the C chord, and the D chord, is because you can play most songs with just 3 chords. I mean, if you've ever heard that, that's really true. Most songs you can get by just knowing 3 chords, and do any song with 3 chords. So if you're ever playing in the key of G, you can use these 3 chords, G, C, and D. Okay, so somebody says key of G, and you know your G chord, your C chord, and your D major chord, or they're all major actually, G major, C major, D major, then you can probably play along with whatever song it is, really. So we have the G chord there. Now the next one's the C chord. This one's kind of feels backwards. It feels like you have to shift everything around, and you really do, but we're going to do a C chord now, so this is how we do that. The low E is open, okay, so we're not going to touch it. And then we're going to take our ring finger of our left hand and put it right here on the A string, on the 3rd fret. Okay, so you take that ring finger and just put it right there. All right, so that's what I'm doing. Of course, I don't want to lean back like that. I want to stay on my fingertips. Now, the next string on the D string here, I want to have 2nd fret, 1, 2, and I'm going to use my middle finger there. So middle finger like that, right there. Okay, so I have these 2 strings like that. and I'm just rolling back so you can see what I'm doing. If I use my fingertips, you can't really see what I'm doing, so that's why I'm rolling back there. Then we're going to use our pointer finger. We're going to skip the G string. See, the G doesn't have anything, so G is open. Okay. The B string, though, we're going to have our first finger, our pointer finger on first fret there. All right, so that's the last one, and then the high E will be open. Okay, so you can strum all the strings. You just want to have the A and the D and the B string. You want to have a finger down. Okay, so it looks like this. All right, if you're watching a video of somebody playing a song and their hand looks like mine does right now, they're playing a C chord. Okay, and you can strum all of them. Some people don't like the low E, so they'll leave it out. So you can leave the low E out if you want to. It doesn't matter really. It just depends on what sound you like, because the E, open E, the low E is part of the chord, but you may not like the sound of it. So if you don't like the sound of it, either don't strum it, or you can wrap your thumb around here and lightly touch the low E so it won't come out, and you can just strum all you want on all the strings, and that way the low E is not sounding because I have my thumb wrapped around there. Okay? Now that is the C chord. Now again, after you get the chord down, using your fingertips, test all the strings. Make sure they're all coming out, and there we have it. Okay, so now we know a G chord, and we know a C chord. Alright, an E minor chord that we learned in another lesson, and also the D chord over F sharp, add 6, add 2, is also a chord that will work in the key of G. So, quite a few chords here that you can use. So we've learned G, we've learned C. Now I want to show you another fingering for the G, because when you're going back and forth between G chord and C chord, it can be difficult. So I don't use this fingering, but I'm going to show it to you in case you would like to use it, because a lot of people do. You can just change your fingers and use your ring finger here and your middle finger and your pinky. And that's why I was saying use your pinky before, in case you want to finger the G this way. And then it makes it a little easier to get to the C chord, because when you're playing in the key of G, you'll tend to go back and forth between the G and the C a lot, and it's really a hard move if you're not used to it. So some people like to do it this way. See, I'm not having to move as much that way, doing the G chord that way. I like to finger it this way. That's just me, so I wanted to show you that, to give you that option. Okay, it just makes it easier to go back and forth between the G and the C. Okay, now the last chord we're going to learn is the D chord here, and it sounds like this. Now for the D chord, what we want, I'm going to start with this string first, the skinniest string, the high E, and I'm going to put my middle finger on it on the 2nd fret. 1, 2, right there. So there it is. You can see that. Now I'm going to skip the B string, the string right next to the high E. Skip it, and then we're going to go to the G, and I'm going to take my pointer finger and put it on the 2nd fret as well. Okay. Now I got one more thing to do. The string that I skipped, the B string that I skipped, we're going to use that string now. We're going to have our ring finger come down on the 3rd fret right there on the B string to give us the last note. Now when you strum the D chord, you do not want the low E. Okay, there's not an option. It doesn't go with the chord, so leave it out. But we can have the A in there. The A string sounds good. The D's open, and then the top 3 strings you have fingered. So test the strings. Got those? Okay, so that's the D chord. You can, again, wrap your thumb around, lightly touch the E, then you can freely strum and not worry about the low E. Okay? So we definitely want that low E muted, however you work it out. Whether, if you're just strumming and you're going to have to mute it with that thumb. Okay, but if you're just using your thumb and you're lightly going along here, then maybe you can avoid it. But there's the D chord. So we learned 3 chords here, the G, the C, and the D. Now what you need to do is practice going back and forth. Go G, C, G, C, and then practice going G to D. G, D, G, D, 500 million times, okay? Then you need to practice going from C to D. C, D, C, D, C, D. All right? And that would cover it. So going back and forth between those 3 chords in all kinds of combinations, and then practice your strumming pattern using it that we learned in the previous lesson. Da, 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 da. Okay, so there are your 3 chords.